Welcome to Art Sleep. I'm Anthony, and tonight I'll be sharing a soothing sleep lecture on history to gently guide you into a peaceful night's rest, calming your mind and soul. This is the haunting tale of Henry VIII of England, one of history's most feared monarchs, whose end was as grotesque as his reign was grand, a story rarely told in its full, somber reality. But tonight, we'll uncover it together, letting its lessons lull you into a restful slumber. So hit subscribe to be the first to experience these tranquil journeys and never miss a moment of relaxation. Let us drift back to the dawn of Henry VIII's life, born on the 28th of June, 1491, in the opulent halls of Greenwich Palace, where the air was thick with the scent of roses and the promise of greatness. The second son of Henry VII and Elizabeth of York, young Henry Tudor was a child of the Renaissance, a boy whose golden red hair shimmered like the sun over the Thames, his blue eyes bright with curiosity, his laughter echoing through the stone corridors of the palace. When he ascended to the throne at the tender age of 17 in 1509, he was hailed as Europe's most handsome prince, a vision of majesty that captivated all who saw him tall and athletic, his frame a testament to vigor, his bearing regal as if he were carved from the marble of the gods themselves. A Venetian ambassador, his quill trembling with awe, wrote of Henry's extraordinary figure and angelic countenance, declaring him superior in beauty to any Christian prince, a king whose presence seemed to light the very air around him, his smile a beacon of hope for a nation emerging from the shadow of civil war. Henry was more than a figure of beauty. He was a scholar, a musician, a poet, his mind as sharp as the swords he wielded in tournaments, his fingers deft on the lute, his voice a melody that charmed the court. He spoke Latin, French, and Italian, his words a tapestry of learning, his court a glittering stage where art and culture flourished under his patronage. In those early years, England looked to their young king with adoration, seeing in him the promise of a golden age, a ruler who would lead them into prosperity, his reign a canvas painted with the colors of hope and ambition. But beneath this radiant exterior, the seeds of tragedy were already sown, waiting for the moment to unravel the tapestry of his life, a moment that would transform the Golden Prince into a figure of sorrow, his light dimming under the weight of his own mortality. As we drift through this tale, let the image of young Henry, vibrant and full of promise, guide you into a gentle rest, his story a reminder of the fleeting nature of glory, a whisper to ease you into dreams. The year was 1536, and the air in Greenwich was crisp with the chill of January, the clatter of hooves and the cheers of the crowd filling the jousting grounds as Henry, now 44, prepared for a tournament, his armor gleaming, his horse a steed of power and grace. Jousting was the sport of kings, a display of strength and valor, and Henry reveled in it, his lance steady, his heart alight with the thrill of the contest. But fate, ever a fickle mistress, had other plans. Mid-charge his horse stumbled its legs, buckling under the weight of the king, and Henry fell, the world slowing as he crashed to the ground, his armored body pinned beneath the beast, the impact a thunderclap that silenced the crowd. For 2 agonizing hours, the king lay unconscious, his court frozen in fear, their whispers a prayer for his survival, their eyes fixed on the still form of their monarch, wondering if this was the end of the Tudor line. Henry awoke, his breath ragged, his body bruised but alive, yet the injury to his right leg, a deep gash torn by the fall, would never fully heal its mark, a scar on both his flesh and his fate, and the wound festered over time, transforming into an open ulcer, its edges raw and weeping a constant source of torment that exhaled a heavy odor, a scent so potent it announced his presence long before he entered a room. A bitter irony for a king whose vanity had once been his pride. The ulcer's stench was a devastating humiliation, a reminder of his mortality that clashed with the image of divine majesty. He sought to project his courtiers, forced to endure the smell in silence, their faces masks of composure, for to show revulsion was to risk the king's wrath, a wrath that grew darker with each passing day. The accident marked a turning point, not only in Henry's body, but in his spirit. The once golden prince, now shadowed by pain and paranoia, his temper flaring like a storm over the English coast. Some historians whisper that the fall may have caused a brain injury, exacerbating tendencies towards suspicion and rage, his mind a battlefield where trust withered and fear took root. Coincidentally, this dark transformation unfolded during the same period, when Henry ordered the execution of his second wife, Anne Boleyn, in May 1536. Her fate sealed by fabricated charges of adultery and treason, her neck meeting the executioner's blade as the king's heart hardened. The accident, the ulcer, the loss of Anne, these threads wove a tapestry of decline, setting the stage for a descent that would lead Henry to a fate as tragic as it was grotesque, a fate we'll explore as we drift deeper into this somber tale, letting its weight guide us gently into rest. With his mobility diminished, Henry's body began to change the athletic frame of his youth, giving way to a heaviness that mirrored the burdens of his reign. Once a man, whose waist measured a trim 89 centimeters, a symbol of his vigor, Henry's girth expanded to over 130 centimeters, his weight ballooning to more than 180 kilograms a mass, so great that he could no longer walk unaided, his steps a memory of a time long past. The royal apartments, once a stage for his grandeur, became a prison of necessity. Their door frames widened to accommodate his passage, a specially designed pulley system creaking under his weight, as servants moved him from room to room, their hands trembling with the effort, their eyes averted from the king's suffering. The royal diet, a feast fit for a king, became a catalyst for his decline, its excess, a mirror to the excess of his power. Kitchen records reveal a daily intake of 5,000 calories, a banquet of red meats, venison, beef, and pork, piled high in savory pies, their crusts golden, their fillings rich, paired with little in the way of vegetables, the plates washed down with impressive quantities of wine and beer, their sweetness a fleeting comfort in the face of his pain. This regimen, combined with forced inactivity, accelerated his physical deterioration, his body a canvas where indulgence painted strokes of sorrow, his health fading like the colors of a forgotten portrait, his once vibrant frame now a shadow of its former glory. The ulcers on his legs worsened their torment, a constant companion, the flesh around them softening the wounds so deep that the bones beneath became visible, a haunting sight for the physicians who tended him. Treatments of the time, rooted in the limited knowledge of 16th century medicine, only deepened his suffering, cauterization with hot irons, the searing pain, a scream in the night. Mixtures of arsenic and mercury applied to the sores, their toxins seeping into his blood. And regular bloodletting, a practice meant to balance the humors, but which only weakened him further, his strength fading with each crimson drop. The smell from his wounds grew so heavy that it could be detected 3 rooms away, a miasma that clung to the tapestries of Whitehall Palace, a reminder of the king's mortality, that no amount of royal authority could banish a scent that whispered of decay, even as he lived, a prelude to the end that awaited him. As we drift through this chapter of Henry's decline, let the weight of his suffering guide you into a gentle rest. His story, a reminder of the fragility beneath the crown, a whisper to ease you into dreams. At 49, Henry sought to reclaim a flicker of his youth, marrying Catherine Howard, a young woman of just 19. Her beauty a stark contrast to the king's fading form, her laughter a melody in the somber halls of the court. Henry described this union as a return to his golden days, his heart alight with the hope of renewal. But the reality was far darker, the age difference and his physical state turning the marriage into a spectacle of sorrow. His deformed limbs and heavy odor, a burden the young queen could not bear. Catherine, her spirit unbowed, sought solace in the arms of a young courtier, Thomas Culpeper, their whispers a secret that could not be kept in a court rife with intrigue, their affair a spark that ignited the king's wrath. When it was discovered in 1541, leading to the execution of both lovers, their fates sealed by Henry's unyielding hand, their light dimming under the shadow of his pain. His final marriage to Catherine Parr in 1543 was less a union of hearts and more a political arrangement, a partnership born of necessity rather than love. Catherine stepping into the role of a nurse as much as a wife, her hands gentle as she tended to the dying king, her patience a quiet strength in the face of his suffering. Catherine's dedication was remarkable, a beacon of compassion in a court darkened by fear, her care a testament to her resilience, especially given the fates of Henry's previous queens, her presence a comfort as the king's light began to fade, her voice a whisper of kindness in his final days. These marriages, marked by tragedy and necessity, were threads in the tapestry of Henry's decline, each union a reflection of his changing self, a self consumed by pain and paranoia, a self we'll explore further as we drift deeper into this tale, letting its somber notes lull you into rest. In his final years, Henry's body became a battleground of ailments, modern experts suggesting a litany of conditions that turned his last days into a continuous torment. Diabetes, its sweetness, a cruel irony in his suffering. Severe gout, its pain, a fire in his joints. Hypertension, a pressure that weighed on his heart. And heart failure, a slow dimming of his vital light. Some whisper of syphilis, though many historians dispute this. The evidence too thin to confirm the debate, a footnote in the story of his decline. A decline marked by a body that could no longer bear the weight of its own existence, a body that betrayed the king who had once commanded the world. Accounts from the time paint a picture of a man torn between extremes, his days oscillating between unbearable pain, where his screams echoed through the palace, his curses, a storm that scattered his courtiers, and moments of deep melancholy, where he sat motionless for hours, his eyes distant, his thoughts lost in a sea of regret, the names of his deceased wives, Jane Seymour, Anne Boleyn, whispered in the stillness, their ghosts a shadow on his soul. Henry's paranoia grew with his suffering, the once brilliant statesman now consumed by imaginary conspiracies, his mind a labyrinth of fear, his hand swift to execute those he once trusted, loyal friends and advisers falling to unfounded suspicions, their fates a testament to the darkness that had taken root in the king's heart. Terror gripped the court, a place where an imprudent word or a misinterpreted glance could lead to an accusation of treason, the air thick with the scent of fear, the courtiers' faces pale as they navigated the storm of Henry's moods, their lives hanging by a thread. Just 9 days before his own end, Henry ordered the execution of Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey, his paranoia a blade that cut down even the noblest of his court, a final act of cruelty that marked the twilight of his reign, a reign that had once promised so much but now lay in shadow, its light dimming, as the king's own did a story, will continue as we drift deeper into this somber tale, letting its weight guide us into rest. As Henry's end drew near, his suffering reached a crescendo. His body, a vessel of torment that could barely move, even with the aid of his pulley system, his legs now ravaged by gangrene. The odor, a heavy cloud that enveloped the court courtiers, clutching perfume-soaked handkerchiefs to their noses, their faces masks of forced composure as they stood in the royal presence, their hearts heavy with the knowledge of what was to come. During the winter of 1546 to 1547, the king's health plummeted, recurrent fevers racking his frame, likely the result of septicemia from the infections that had taken hold. His breathing labored, each inhale a struggle, each exhale a whisper of the end. Episodes of delirium clouding his mind, his voice murmuring the names of those he had lost. Jane Seymour and Anne Boleyn, their faces a haunting presence in his final days. Despite the obvious signs of his decline, no one at court dared speak of the king's impending end, English law deeming it treason to predict the monarch's death, a law that forced physicians and courtiers to maintain a facade of hope, their words a hollow promise of recovery, even as the scent of decay emanated from Henry's still-living body, a scent that spoke of the inevitable, a scent that whispered of mortality in a court that had once celebrated divinity, a court now shrouded in sorrow. As the king's light began to fade, a fade we'll explore as we drift deeper into this tale, letting its somber notes lull you into rest. On January 27, 1547, Henry, realizing the end was near, allowed Archbishop Thomas Cranmer to be called to his bedside, the air thick with the scent of decay, the room dim with the weight of impending loss, the king's once mighty frame now a shadow of its former self, his breath shallow, his strength gone. Unable to speak, Henry squeezed Cranmer's hand when asked if he died in the Christian faith, a final gesture of a man whose life had been defined by faith and defiance, his hand a trembling bridge to the divine, his heart a fragile vessel of regret and resolve. In the early hours of January 28th, at the age of 55, the once powerful king exhaled his last breath, his light fading into the stillness of the night, his reign ending not with the glory he had sought, but with the quiet sorrow of a body that could no longer endure, a body that had once been the embodiment of majesty, now a testament to the fragility of all things earthly. But the indignity of Henry's condition did not end with his passing. The aftermath, a haunting coda to his life, a coda we'll explore as we drift deeper into this tale, letting its weight guide us into a gentle rest, its lessons a whisper to ease you into dreams, a whisper of a king whose legacy would endure even as his body faded, a legacy that speaks to us still, a legacy of power and fragility, of glory and sorrow, a legacy that we'll uncover as we continue this journey, letting its somber notes lull you into the embrace of sleep. Henry's enormous size posed a challenge even in death. A special coffin constructed to contain his remains, its wood creaking under the weight of a king who had once commanded the world its planks, a final embrace for a man whose life had been larger than the realm he ruled. Preparing the body for burial was a task of sorrow, the royal embalmers working through the night, their hands steady but hearts heavy, the rudimentary process of the time, removing the viscera, filling the cavities with aromatic herbs, doing little to mask the decay that had already set in the scent of myrrh and frankincense. A faint whisper against the heavy odor that clung to the king's form, a scent that spoke of mortality in a court that had once celebrated divinity, a court now shrouded in sorrow as the king's light faded into memory. During the days that followed, as the body awaited its state funeral, a macabre episode unfolded in the chapel of Sion Abbey, where the coffin rested, its seals inadequate to contain the gases and fluids of decay, dark liquids trickling onto the stone floor, their stain a haunting mark of the king's final indignity. Contemporary accounts whisper of a disturbing scene: stray dogs, their paws silent on the chapel floor, lapping up the putrid substance in the stillness of the night, a sight that horrified the monks who discovered it at dawn. Their prayers a lament for a king whose image of power and majesty had been so thoroughly undone, a king who had defied the Pope, redefined English religion, and sent 2 wives to their fates, now reduced to a mass of decay, his body violated by the very creatures he had once ruled over. A humbling end for a man who had sought to be divine. An end we'll reflect on as we drift deeper into this tale, letting its somber notes lull you into rest. The funeral took place on February 16, 1547, nearly 3 weeks after Henry's passing. The ceremony is a display of royal pomp that belied the sorrow beneath the air thick with the scent of incense and decay. The courtiers' faces pale as they stood in the shadow of the coffin, their voices a chorus of mourning for a king whose reign had shaped a nation. Henry was laid to rest in St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle, beside Jane Seymour, the only wife who had given him the male heir he so desperately sought, Edward VI, a boy whose birth had cost his mother's life, a boy whose reign would be brief, a mere 6 years before illness claimed him at 15, his light dimming as his father's had his death, a quiet echo of the tragedy that marked the Tudor line. The throne passed to Mary, daughter of Catherine of Aragon, whose Catholic heart sought to reverse her father's Protestant reforms, her reign a storm of faith and fire, and then to Elizabeth I, daughter of Anne Boleyn, whose golden age would redefine England, her wisdom, a light that outshone the shadows of her father's legacy, her rule, a testament to the resilience of a dynasty born in turmoil, a dynasty whose roots were watered with both blood and brilliance. A dynasty we'll reflect on as we drift deeper into this tale, letting its weight guide us into a gentle rest, its lessons a whisper to ease you into dreams. The grotesque death of Henry VIII serves as a powerful reminder of the limits of human power, a king who considered himself above the law, capable of redefining a nation's faith and disposing of lives at his whim, brought low by the frailty of his own body. His end, a symbol of the decline of an era, a decline that mirrored the decay of his flesh, a decline that whispered of mortality in a court that had once celebrated divinity. English historian Alison Weir writes of the paradox of Henry's life, a man who began with such promised beauty and ability only to end as a grotesque caricature of himself, tormented by physical pain and mental instability, feared and flattered by those around him, but rarely truly loved his transformation from ideal Renaissance prince to ailing tyrant, a case study in the corrosive effects of absolute power, chronic pain, and progressive disease, a transformation that reshaped a man and a nation, a transformation we'll reflect on as we drift deeper into this tale, letting its somber notes lull you into rest. Henry's political legacy, the separation of England from Rome, the establishment of the Anglican Church, continues to shape the modern world. Its echoes a testament to his ambition, but his personal end serves as a reminder of human fragility. His last moments, a stark contrast to the official portraits that depict him in all his royal majesty, their golden hues, a lie against the reality of his labored breath, his deformed frame, a dissonance between public image and private truth that is one of the great lessons of his life, a lesson that whispers of the ephemeral nature of power, a lesson that will carry with us as we drift deeper into this tale, letting its weight guide us into a gentle rest. Thus ended the existence of one of history's most notorious monarchs, not with the glory he sought, but with a heavy stench and an end unworthy of his crown. A man who transformed England and altered the course of Western history, reduced to a victim of his own mortal flesh. His death, a symbolic moment that reflects the fleeting nature of power, a moment that forced the monarchy, a divine institution that considered itself above the laws of nature, to recognize its own mortality. A moment that we'll reflect on as we close this journey, letting its somber notes lull you into the embrace of sleep. The final irony of Henry's life lies in his legacy, the male lineage he fought so hard to secure, breaking with Rome, ending 2 queens, producing a fragile son who died young, his true legacy carried by his daughters, particularly Elizabeth I, daughter of the woman. He condemned her reign, a golden age that outshone her father's shadows, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a testament to the enduring power of legacy, a legacy that whispers to us now as we drift into rest. The death of Henry VIII is not just a tale of medical horror, but a moral story about the limits of power, the inevitability of decay. His body, once the embodiment of royalty, now a symbol of the transience of all earthly glory, a reminder that we are all equal before the end, regardless of our crowns or achievements, a reminder that fascinates and humbles, revealing the vulnerable humanity behind the facade of absolute power, a reminder to carry with you as you drift into the gentle embrace of sleep, letting the lessons of Henry VIII guide you into dreams. A king whose story whispers of fragility and strength of power and sorrow, of a life that shaped a world, even as it faded into shadow. Good night, dear listener, and sleep well.
Thanks for watching this video. If you like this video, drop a comment below. And please like, share, and subscribe my channel.